Hey, welcome to DadMode, God, Grit, and Goals, and another episode that I am calling From Warrior to Guardian, a Marine's Journey to Civilian Fatherhood. So this has been an ongoing conversation with a good friend of mine, and he is a single dad, and he has a young daughter that he is raising, and we've been talking a lot about our identity and how important that identity is, because our identity is what anchors us and gives us a framework for who we are and what our role is in the world. And so, it's really evident that anybody that's been in the military is obviously well trained, well disciplined, and has learned to make the proper sacrifices in their life to position themselves as someone who's really, this guy's in incredible shape, first of all. And I'm hoping to get him in here on an interview, but this is going to be a monologue podcast just to kind of hopefully set that up. And it was through his permission and his encouragement that he said, I think other men need to hear this. So I wanted to get a kind of a jump on that and really discuss the topic of identity. You see, I've come to the recognition that we live our lives as characters in a story. That if you think about it, you are a character that is your personhood, your personality, and you have many roles. You might be a father, you might be a son, you might be a brother, you might be a coworker. Those are all different roles. But who you are at the core is the character that you play, and that is your identity. And so many of us have an identity. I carried along the identity of as an entrepreneur for a very long time. And that's just how I viewed the world and how I looked at things. So I've always admired the warrior identity. I spent about 15 years with a group of Christian men called wingmen. And the whole notion behind wingmen was that we're not meant to do life alone, that we are to have a wingman. And as wingmen, and as my friends in wingmen put it, that when they flew out on missions, they weren't trying to end the war. They were focused on the mission, and that as wingmen, their responsibility was bring your wingman home back with you. And if you remember Top Gun, the idea of never leave your wingman resonates. And I think if you recognize the fact that life is hard and you need that resilience, which is what we talk about, grit, you have to decide whether you are a fighter or a lover, right? And I forget what movie that is. Are you a fighter or a lover? I happen to be both. Which reminds me of a funny joke. So let's start with a funny joke. Men that have receding hairline are great thinkers. Men that have a bald spot in the back of their head are great lovers. And men who are completely bald think they're great lovers. So just a little fun tidbit there. Where do you fit in that? So the warrior identity, I think the warrior identity is an attractive identity as a male. I think it's easy to acknowledge that if you've been in the military and you served active duty. I think other men look to that as an identity. And what comes to mind when I think about that are qualities like strength and discipline and courage. And all of these can be seen through the lens of a warrior. But what happens when you are no longer in the military? Or what happens when you no longer are, I've got a friend that was a professional sports person. What happens when he no longer played in the NFL? It kind of leaves you wondering what now. So you've had a background, and suddenly you've got this label as father. And so my Marine friend, coworker, was really wrestling with, I'm not sure this warrior thing fits me anymore. And he had come to this recognition that I'm a bit lost without that, and it doesn't fit in all cases, because warriors, your body is a fine-tuned weapon, and at some point when you've got to dedicate yourself to other things and you've got to manage time in a different way, and you have to take a job, and you got to spend time with your kids or your wife or other family members. There's just so many distractions, so many things pulling on you. In your heart when you're not doing the things that you need to do any longer in order to really carry that mantle of that identity. That's why identities are so powerful. And while he was wrestling with that notion, he, over Christmas, was sharing with me that he was getting, he was not feeling great. He was lonely. He was getting depressed. And he turned to the scriptures and began to read that. And he said, I tried to make myself be happy. And that wasn't working. You can't just pretend that you're happy. And by reading the scriptures, he found peace. And it began to calm him. Excuse me. It calmed his spirit. And what began to strike him as he thought about this transition from the military and his role as a father, and based on some conversations that we had, he was like, who am I now? What is the identity that I can claim that's believable, that's consistent, that is, that hits me at the core and is something I can build upon? And what he came up with was, I'm a beloved child of God. And a big smile came across his face. And he said, when that hit me, I found the peace, and through peace I found happiness. And so you can't go at happiness directly. You've got to go through happiness. You've got to get to happiness through contentment. And we talk a lot about the need and the importance of contentment and the challenges with contentment. Because to a certain degree, contentment is giving up. It's like, do I give up my warrior nature? This is my grandson. Hey, Cade. This is my is it the end of an adventure, or am I giving up on a goal, or what is actually this transition that I'm going through? Because the military is very structured, and being a dad is not very structured. You've probably learned already that you must be self-disciplined. I heard this a long time ago and shared it with my kids. that there's no escaping discipline. You will either discipline yourself or someone will impose their discipline upon you. And the more that you learn to be self-disciplined, then the more freedom you actually have in so many areas of your life. So this idea of striving for happiness, I just want to be happy. We think, well, that just means that I don't have to work. I can do nothing but sit on the couch all day. I can get lost. Well, there's no real happiness in that. Over a period of time, you've accomplished nothing. You're not going anywhere. And so as a character in a story, you're pretty boring. And the character of a warrior inside of challenges and chaos, that's a strong identity. That's someone who's not the victim, but they're the victor. So that's why that's such a cool identity to be able to have and to hold. And so my friend thought, I need to give that up in favor of something else. And I think what happens is we get into this either or situation as opposed to both and. And the reality is, it's a matter of positioning what is prime versus what is subordinate. So there's the primary, where warrior was primary for him. And now beloved child of God has to take that primary position. Then there are some subordinate things. And so what I shared with him is that you don't need to actually abandon warrior, but it could be subordinated to child of God. And so to do that means that the battlefields are changing. So you are now a beloved child of God. So you are created in the image of God. God lives within you. And yet you still have this warrior spirit about you. And so as a character in a story, you need to find and enable a better character and a better narrative. And so here's what we came up with. I talked to him about, as a beloved child of God, you operate from love. You operate from accomplishment. You're no longer striving to achieve. It's like you've been born into a new family. Let me put it this way. If you were poor and adopted into a rich family, and you were accustomed to having to steal food because you were homeless, let's say, and suddenly you're adopted into a family whose cupboards are full, well, you would be hoarding the food because you're not sure. You've been raised in such a way where it's not ever present. And so with this new identity as beloved child of God, like God's given you everything that you need to be successful in your life. And you operate from the gifts. You operate, you no longer have to beg. You no longer have to, you just have to receive. Right? It's a really strange paradigm that you just have to receive. You receive from God, and then from your overflow, you give it away. So this is what the scriptures are trying to tell us. that the contentment comes from knowing you are loved. You don't have to earn your love. That your identity is secure as a beloved child of God, which means that you have a relationship with a loving Father. And your relationship with that loving Father means that you can go to him for anything and everything, and that you are forgiven for whatever was done wrong in the past. Your sins are forgiven. And you are now able to operate in purpose. All right. So, as a beloved child of God, you have a relationship with God who loves you. You don't need to hide from him. And you operate now with a purpose, as opposed to striving and having a relationship with a God who's mad at you or expecting things from you. Like that's not how it works. That's backwards. You're not trying to earn your way to heaven. You have already been given heaven. And now your purpose is to bring heaven to earth every day. And you do that by bringing hope into hopeless situations. That's what you do. And so when you understand your identity as a child of God who has been granted all of the rights and privileges that entails, when Christ says, you will do even more than me, this is exactly what he's talking about. And yet we go, who am I? Well, you're a beloved child of God. He loves you. And he sits at the right hand of the Father. And he's prepared a place for you. And so this is yours. And if you don't use it, well, it's going to go wasted because he's given you everything you need. And so you just need to grab it. Okay. And so now, where does the warrior fit in this? And what I suggested to my friend was, you don't abandon warrior, but you are a new kind of warrior. You are on mission with God, for God. And you are not of this world, but you are in this world. And so what that says to me is that you are on a secret mission, that you are behind enemy lines, and you are a secret agent for God. And you are a warrior, identifying the darkness and bringing the light. That is your calling. That is your purpose. That is what you do. And you are the light. You bring light to dark places. And you use your warrior spirit to do that, which means you must be of sound mind. You must be of sound body. The best thing you can do as a dad is be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. This was the revelation that I received when I was disgusted with my own health and thinking, what can I teach anybody when I don't feel great about myself? What's the best thing I can do for my adult children? What's the best way I can honor my friend who recently passed away? It all came collapsing together for me, saying the best thing that you can do to honor those who have gone before you is to be the best you that you can be. And the best you that you can be is not lazy, is not slothful, is not a glutton, is not greedy, is not a miser. It's none of those things. It's someone who's generous, someone who gives of themselves, someone who is not stingy, and living a life in that way. So this was a big revelation. And he got very excited about this. So I want to spend time, and I want you to have the opportunity to meet him. So calling him out to be part of this podcast and talk about his new role as a civilian father. And maybe we can explore how he's refining his identity, and how he sees his new role in his family and community. Maybe this has happened for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe some lessons and insights that you have learned as you have reframed your identity. If you've gone through a big life transition like this, if you're on the front end of this, you're growing. As you get older and you're on the back end, I think there's a lot more reflection involved. I have a much deeper appreciation now. You hear this over and over again as a young person. It's like old people have a lot of wisdom, and it's so true. And it's because life is much better understood looking backwards than looking forward. And there is wisdom in the ages. So the identity, so think about that. Like there's roles that you play, but then there's an identity. That is your character, and there is a story. And the most important story is the one that you're constantly telling yourself. And I guess I'll wrap it up and end it with this. We're not supposed to take the Lord's name in vain. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that we need to be careful of the power of our tongue, because our word speaks life and death. And the scriptures say in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. And we know that to be Jesus. But it is also known that there are power in our words. And the most powerful words that we say is I am. And the word Yahweh is the word that God used to describe himself. Yahweh, I am. I am the I am. So it's super powerful. And you have to be very careful and very deliberate about saying I am. I am a beloved child of God. I am a warrior. Versus I am stupid. I am lost. I'm just whatever. You're not just you have been given and granted, and you have the ability to create. This is what it means to be in the image of God. That the image of God means you are a creator. And you create first with your words. Think about this. Nothing that exists, whether created by God or man, that first wasn't words. So words have the power to create, and they have the power to tear down. When we use the Lord's name, I am, in vain means not for its intended purpose, then you are not using I am for its intended purpose, which means you are using it to tear down, not lift up. Let that sink in for a minute. So are you a creator or are you a destroyer? Now, if you see, there are things that we feel like we need to destroy, but that leaves things barren. What we really need to do is create. So what we don't want is the desert. What we want is the promised land. And all throughout Scripture, God is saying, if I could just find one person who would believe, who would be worthy, whose actions would be properly aligned, then I'll save this thing. But if not, it will get wiped out. So don't take the Lord's name in vain by watching what you are saying when you are referring to yourself and saying, I am. I am at peace. I am okay. I'm a beloved child of God. I'm a warrior behind enemy lines, bringing God's plan and purpose and love to the world around me. I think we all want to change the world, but what we really need to do is just change our world. You can change your world far easier than you can change the world. Focusing on changing the world is overwhelming, and it's just a bunch of words and there are no actions behind those words. You're doing nothing. You're just griping, you're moaning, you're complaining. You're a whiner. But if you're really going to make a change your world by changing the words and changing the thoughts that are occupying your mind. And so if you're going through a challenging time, what is it that you're saying? We need to hold our thoughts captive. That means write those thoughts down, literally. This is an exercise I've gone through. I've shared this before, but I want to share it again. Write down all of those negative thoughts. Hold them captive. Look at them. Put them on a sheet of paper. Now pull out a new sheet of paper and write down the opposite of all of those. One of the things that I wrote down was, nobody cares what I have to say. The opposite is, everyone cares what I have to say. And now I'm doing a podcast. And nobody's listening. That's the little voice in my head. So I stomp on it and said, everybody's listening. It doesn't matter. I'm exercising the discipline of communicating. And I might be horrible at it now, and I apologize that I'm new at this. But the only way to get better is to be horrible. And you have to be okay with that. And then you have to decide, what is the measure of my success? And I've learned a lot about the measurement of success. This goes with contentment. You are not content if you put up that the only measure of success is that I get 1 million views. Like, that's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. One of my measurements of success is that I promise to show up. I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up in the morning, and I'm going to do some sit-ups and push-ups. I have a goal. 60 sit-ups, 60 push-ups. Okay, that's what I've settled into. And I mock it up. I show up and take a shower, and then I turn it to full cold, and I do that to energize my body, and it gets me. It's working on my drawing a blank immune system, right? We need to strengthen our immune systems, so that's important. So these are all the little things. So for me, my identity is same. I'm a beloved child of God, but I've also adopted subordinate to that I'm an athlete, because that's helped me. So as an athlete, I play hockey, and I got a Peloton. I ride the bike. In the summer, I swim. I work out. These are the important things. This is athletes, a good identity to be healthy. whatever it is for you. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, and any kind of redefining, any transition you've gone through, or any redefinement of your identity, any lessons or insights. I just want to encourage you that how you see yourself as a character in a story, and the story that you tell yourself, is the most important story you will ever write. And the irony is you can pick whatever character you want. And you might say, well, I wasn't raised the way you were raised, or I wasn't brought up in the best of circumstances. And all of that might be true, but who cares? Who is writing your story? You see, there is what has happened to you in the past, but that's all gone. So its only relevance are lessons learned that you will carry forward, and limitations that you have determined have been placed upon you. But I guarantee, if you do enough reading or you do enough research, you'll find people that have come from far worse situations than you and accomplished way more. So there's plenty of evidence that suggests you can change your identity, and you can change the narrative of your story. And it starts with a decision. This is why, as Christians, you only have to believe. But to believe requires a shift in acceptance. That you accept this narrative to be what? True. True for you. And is it true for everyone else? No. Only those who believe. So we say, well, is Jesus the Son of God? If you believe. Or what if you don't believe? Does that change it for him? No, he believed. Does it change it for those that don't believe? No, they don't believe. So the only ones that it changes for are those that change their belief. It's a paradox. Your belief is the change. If you don't believe, you don't change. If you believe, you change. I love the scripture that says, I believe, Lord. Help me with my unbelief. Right? Because it's a constant decision. It is a decision that you'll make over and over and over and over again as you encounter different things, different experiences, different people. And so your faith, meaning your belief, must be anchored. Its roots must go deep. And we must be reminded. Lord, remind me of who you say I am. Because I get knocked around a lot. Remind me of my identity. Oh, that's right, you love me. Because I'm hating myself right now. But you love me. I don't believe in myself, but you believe in me. Lord, you know the world needs to change. I need you to change it, Lord. And his response is, no, I created you to be the change. Whoa, that's a calling. That's a life of adventure. He is calling you to a life of adventure. Not a life of giving up, but a life of stepping into this identity that you are the son of the King. And as such, You are a prince, but are you behaving as such? Do you accept that identity? And now a prince needs to be disciplined in the art of war, disciplined in strategy, disciplined in communication, disciplined in leading, disciplined in all of these various aspects so that you can lead in the kingdom. Okay, now he's given you a little playground of a family to begin these things. And it says, I've given you a child that you are now responsible for. And it's amazing, and it's helpless, and it needs you. And so it's time to rise up. Rise up and be the man. Operate from a place of acceptance. You are affirmed. You are accepted. You're also accountable. And that's why we need other men. That's why you need a wingman. You need other men around you to help you understand that, yeah, I get it. I've been there too. You're okay with us. We can speak truth to each other. We're going to make some commitments. And we're going to check back in with you and hold you accountable to what we want? No. To what you want? Yes. To what you say you believe, to what you say you're going to do. And we're going to hold you accountable to that. In love. We're going to affirm you as a man. If you don't have other men in your life that are godly relationships, you need to have them. It'll be vital for you. You want to be one with your wife. But if that's where the trouble is, you need other men around you who get it. Because ain't nobody understands women. All right. Gone through quite a bit here, but hopefully this has been helpful. If you've enjoyed this, share it with a friend. I'd love to hear from you. Make a comment. I'm on YouTube, MikeTobias.me. The DadMode Podcast is on my YouTube channel. You can also go to MikeTobias.me/podcast. We're on every platform. And a cool thing I just learned, you can actually talk to your Amazon Echo. And I said, Alexa, play the DadMode Podcast, God, Grit, and Goals. And sure enough, it plays. So that's really cool. Thanks for listening. I love you. Have a great day.